Welcome, friends, to the Girl Mom Podcast, a community where we aim to be strong mothers raising empowered daughters. This is Kari, your host. Today's show is about mean girls and giving your daughter a framework to help her understand why some girls act mean and to also help her avoid that pitfall. Our kids are growing up in a mean culture, and our best defense as parents is to encourage them to do the right thing, even when their classmates don't, and offer a big picture perspective that helps them feel less alone and also better equipped to deal with hurtful people. Whether you're listening to this episode alone, with friends, or with your favorite girl, I hope it encourages you and offers some language to use with your daughter when she feels hurt or attacked by other girls. Thanks for tuning in and enjoy the show. So there's a lot of attention paid these days to the subject of mean girls. For moms raising daughters, it's a hot topic, something that adults can, understandably, get fired up about. And in our anger regarding this topic, it's easy to talk about mean girls as if they're a foreign and totally different species, people we have absolutely nothing in common with. But the truth is, we all have some Regina George in us. We all have the potential to be manipulative, self-serving, catty, and gossipy. Even girls with kind dispositions have mean impulses, and what makes girls mean is choosing to act on these impulses. It takes a lot of character and self-control to not take the bait. People talk about mean girls as if girls have a monopoly on being mean, but I hear stories about cruelty among boys that's even worse than the typical mean girl saga. What I believe we have is not a gender issue, but a societal issue. In short, we live in a mean age. We have a culture shaping our children that is darker, more narcissistic, and less empathetic than the culture that shaped us. Worst of all is how our children are seeing terrible role models in the adults around them. My husband's uncle was a successful businessman who never did business with a company that had a questionable culture because his philosophy was that the fish stinks from the head down, and any poor character he witnessed in the middle of a company had to be a reflection of the company leaders. In a similar vein, when we consider how many adults act today, how adults will openly bash each other on social media and act like bullies at an age when we should know better, it logically follows that we'll see a trickle-down effect on our children. All this to say, as we talk about mean girls, we need humility and rationale. We need to remember that no human being is 100% good or 100% bad. None of us are the hero in every situation. We all have sinful natures and redeeming qualities, and as we keep this in mind, it prevents us from turning every mean girl we meet into some caricature villain like what we see in a cartoon. At the same time, the hurt that mean girls inflict is real, and as mothers, we've lived long enough to meet our fair share of mean girls and mean women. We've learned ways to handle them, keep a safe distance, and guard our hearts. But when we think of mean girls targeting our daughters, or catch our daughters acting mean themselves, it pains us and worries us in an entirely new way. So how do you talk through the subject with your daughter? How do you help your daughter see the reality of our mean and sometimes heartless culture through a healthy lens? No girl or woman is a total saint when it comes to relationships, and we all have room to improve in some way. We all have mistakes we can learn from, our own and other people's, that can help bring kindness back to our society. If you'd like to give your daughter a framework for understanding mean girls and avoiding the temptation to act like one herself, here are 10 talking points to start the conversation. Number 1, girls act mean because it gives them a sense of power and importance. T.S. Eliot once said, "Half the harm that is done in this world is due to people who want to feel important. They don't mean to do harm, but the harm does not interest them, or they do not see it, or they justify it because they are absorbed in the endless struggle to think well of themselves." Pope John Paul II once said that the opposite of love is not hate, but rather using people, treating people like things and things like people. Yes, some girls do intentionally act mean, but oftentimes I don't think girls even realize how much hurt they've caused. They have no idea until it happens to them how painful words and actions can be. The reason why many girls act mean is because they're looking out for themselves or singularly focused on their friends, their agenda, or their need to belong. They're often on a power trip that's driven by hidden motives, narcissism, or a sense of superiority. Number 2, most people are decent and want to do the right thing. But in any environment, you'll have some bad apples. You'll have some truly mean people who can mistreat others and not even feel guilty or remorseful because their conscience is numb and they don't have God in their heart. Since God is love, it's impossible to feel love or show love apart from Him. I have a friend whose father was a former high school principal, and he used to tell his children, "It only takes one bad apple to spoil the bunch." What this means is it only takes one truly mean person, a ringleader, to turn a good thing around and pollute an environment for everyone. A mean girl who's a ringleader expects blind obedience, and to stay in her good graces, her followers have to do what she says. So when you hear of a group of girls ganging up on an individual, it's usually a ringleader who made the call. With a simple statement like, "Let's leave her out," she can get everybody on board, often because her followers are too scared or insecure to challenge her for fear of losing status or their place in a group. Sadly, targeting and uniting against one person can be bonding for a group. It creates a common goal or an enemy. Many girls take part in these interactions like it's all fun and games, and only when they get targeted do they realize the deep scars and tremendous pain this causes the victim. Most kids and teenagers can't think too far into the future. At most, they might imagine life a few years down the road. So give your daughter a long-term perspective. Remind her how her classmates today will always remember the way that she treats them. 30 years from now, when her name comes up in conversation, they'll either remember her with a smile on their face or a pit in their stomach. They'll either be so glad they knew her or so glad they never have to see her again. Anyone with a conscience will regret being the mean girl, but they will never, ever regret being the kind one. Number 3, some mean girls will change. They'll grow up, mature, and realize how awful they once were. They'll feel deeply remorseful and wish they could erase the pain that they once caused. They may even ask their victims to forgive them, calling them up 20 or 30 years later to apologize. Although this doesn't ease any pain your daughter may feel today, it's good to keep this in mind. It's also good to remember that some apologies owed to your daughter will never come, and she can't hold her breath waiting for them or live her life expecting for every wrong to be righted. Some girls who act mean never change. They never feel convicted of the damage and hurt they've caused. Instead, they'll grow up, get married, raise mean daughters and sons, and become one big mean, terrorizing family. It's really sad when the cycle repeats itself, but it happens because we live in a broken world. While some people heal with time and get better, others just get more hardened. And until that healing comes and change happens, it's best for your daughter to keep a safe distance. Number 4, mean girls eventually get what they have coming. Your daughter doesn't have to beat any mean girl at her own game or devise a plot to bring her down, because people who act mean dig their own graves. They bring about their own demise through self-destructive choices. Give it time, and many of your daughter's classmates will gain confidence and get a backbone that allows them to stand up to the mean girls or quit giving them attention altogether. Many followers of mean girls will jump off that ship as they get burned by their relationships and realize they want real and loyal friends. Girls who act mean will see doors of opportunity close as their reputation catches up with them, or as they make the wrong people mad. Somehow, someway, mean people get what they deserve, and your daughter will find peace in knowing that she had nothing to do with it. Number 5, you can't throw dirt on someone without getting dirt on yourself. Girls become mean by hanging with a mean crowd. And if your daughter thinks that she can hang around with mean girls and not have them rub off, she's fooling herself. She won't raise them up to her standards. Instead, they'll pull her down to theirs. While friends should definitely laugh and have fun, what your daughter and her friends laugh about and bond over matters. Friendships that center around gossip or making fun of people, starting rumors, hating people, or just blind obedience aren't real friendships. They don't last, and if they do last, your daughter will constantly have that feeling that she can't leave the table for fear that her friends will talk about her as soon as she gets up. Good friends will help your daughter become the best version of herself. They'll help her feel good about herself, not by throwing dirt on others, but by building her up. Number 6, what comes out of a mean girl's mouth reflects what is in her heart. How she talks to others is how she talks to herself. One way to help your daughter feel empathy for mean girls is to imagine what it's like to live with that negativity. Imagine being stuck in a mental prison 24/7 with no easy escape. It is impossible for any human to act mean and feel good about it because God designed us in His image to reflect His goodness, and anytime we go against His plan and the desires He planted in our heart, it's going to stir up restlessness and discontent. The mind of a mean girl is a pretty terrible place to be, and as your daughter imagines the thoughts, fears, insecurities, and fears of abandonment that she's probably wrestling with, she'll begin to understand why the hardest people to love are the ones who need love most. Number 7, the pain that mean girls inflict can make your daughter bitter or better. Hurt people, and when your daughter gets hurt, she has a choice. She can let that hurt harden her and make her the kind of person who dumps her pain on others, or she can let that hurt soften her heart. Some of the kindest souls on this planet became kind because they were hurt, and that led them to promise themselves that they'd never treat anyone the way that they were treated. The worst behaving people give your daughter the best examples of how not to act, so help her learn from the mistakes of mean girls. Remind her that she can't force anyone else to be kind, but she can hold herself to that standard, and in doing so, she'll find peace, freedom, and intimacy with God. Number 8, instead of hating mean girls, your daughter can pray for them. She can ask God to soften their hearts and open their eyes to their mistakes. Nothing is impossible through the grace of God and love of Christ, and both history and Scripture have stories to prove it. In St. Paul, who was originally called Saul, we see the ultimate transformation because Paul was a zealous murderer of Christians until God opened his eyes to the evil he was doing and brought him to his knees in remorse. Once Paul had this change of heart, he became unstoppable in spreading the gospel worldwide and talking about the mercy from God that he had personally experienced. The fact that God used Paul, the most obvious sinner, to write more than half the New Testament reminds us that nobody is beyond grace and redemption. No matter what has happened in the past, the future can be different. So have your daughter pray for God to work in the hearts of girls who act mean. Remind her that God hears her prayers, and though He may not answer those prayers the way that she hopes, He will work all things together for good for those who love Him. Number 9, the more your daughter grows in faith, the less appealing the mean crowd will look, because she'll soon desire more than that crowd can offer. Your daughter will know she's gaining maturity when she begins to care less about the opinions of mean girls and more about the opinions of people she admires and respects. And number 10, it's important for your daughter to believe in humanity despite the bad apples that she meets. Girls often give up on friendship or write off girls completely after having mean girl experiences. This is a mistake because in every season, we need real friends, real love, and real connection. So when your daughter gets hurt or blindsided, help her stay strong, be patient, and do the right thing. Remind her that God rewards faithfulness, and as she works on being a good friend herself and growing her relationship with Him, He'll bring girls into her life that she can count on and trust. In summary, we have all acted mean before out of ignorance or arrogance. And while it's tempting to point fingers and talk about mean girls as if we could never be in their boat, the fact is that boat is constantly in front of us, inviting us to jump in and embrace the hostility of our current culture. It takes strength, courage, and help from God to not cave and act on our mean impulses. It also takes strength, courage, and help from God to recognize when we have acted on our mean impulses and need to apologize for our actions. Clearly, some mean girl behavior is bigger and more devastating than others. The pain can leave deep emotional scars, and when your daughter faces this kind of pain, she needs extra love, compassion, and support. She also needs the hope of Christ because He is the one who heals broken hearts, changes hearts of stone, inspires transformation, and uses for good what people mean for harm. Chances are we will never see a world totally free of mean girls on this side of heaven, but we can rise above the disheartening trends. As mothers and daughters, we can channel our energy into positive relationships, positive conversations, and positive passions. We can surround ourselves with healthy-minded people and trust God with the future, fixing our eyes and attention on bigger things, things with an eternal impact that help us reach our God-given potential and infuse good into a world that desperately needs more kindness, more light, and more real connection. Friends, thank you for tuning in today. I'm so grateful to have you here. If you enjoyed the show, please tell your friends, leave a ratings or review, and subscribe on iTunes so you can access new episodes as soon as they drop. Also, my new book for moms of teenage girls is now available, and it's getting a terrific response, so check it out in the show notes. I'm thankful to be on this journey with you, and I'm praying for you and those special girls in your life.